My name is Jensen. Let's learn some UiPath. Welcome to this advanced UiPath use case where we use data scraping and sentiment analysis, that is emotion AI. The case is that we are Walmart and we want to monitor social media activity regarding our company so we can react to bad PR or potential upcoming shitstorm. We want to scrape each one of the latest tweets here. And then we want to apply them to a sentiment analysis. That is this REST API, for example. This one is free, but you can use Google, Microsoft, or there's a lot of solutions. What this does, it takes each one of the tweets and it will label them as positive, negative, or neutral, and it will give us a score, how likely those are. The technical case is that we will build a solution where we use data scraping to get the latest tweets. Then we will use a simple REST API call to analyze the text. And then we will write it out to an Excel sheet where we can have our tweets, the labels, and the scores. We will also talk about what we can do with these data. For example, we could send an email to our social media department warning them that there's a shitstorm coming up, or that these tweets, one of these tweets are quite likely to be a potential disaster. Let's create the full technical solution here in UiPath. Before we start, we head to our browser and go to textprocessing.com. What this is a simple API that will do the text mining and the NLP for us. That is, it will take our text, in our case the Walmart tweets, and it will analyze them and give us a score. So go to sentiment analysis here, this link, and we can see it here. What we need to do is that we'll need to call an endpoint in UiPath, that is this endpoint. We will add a parameter. The parameter is our text, that is our tweet one by one. And then this API will send us back a JSON, and we can see the JSONs here, or example of JSONs here. So this is a call to this endpoint with the text of great, and then we will get a score back. So we will get a label back. This is positive, and then there's the probabilities. That's the probabilities of it is a negative text, a neutral text, and a positive text. The higher and the closer to 1, the more likely it is that it is this state here, and the lower, that means that it's quite unlikely that it's either negative, neutral, or positive. But shouldn't we just try it in UiPath and then we can create our example afterwards? So we go back to UiPath. Click Manage Packages, All Packages, and then we click Web.Activities. Choose this one, JSON, REST, SOAP, XML. Click Install and click Save. Now we just need to load this, but then we can create the web request, the HTTP request. And you'll do that by go to Activities, search for HTTP request here, drag this guy in. And we need an endpoint. And the endpoint, that was just this one here. So go copy this and paste it back into our endpoint here. Then we need the request method, that is a post. So we'll need to change this one from get to post, and we can see it here. Do an HTTP post, it even helps us up here. So we will change this one to post, and now we just need to add our parameter. So we can see parameter here, click it, add parameter, text, that needs to be text. And that is because we can see that our parameters, that is text, and then we can insert our text. So how about we just, in the value, we can just create that example, great. And we'll leave everything else as it is, and we'll click OK. So now we have created our HTTP request. Let me just change this to main. Then we just need to have an output. This one will come out as a JSON, as we saw. So on the output over here in the properties, in result, press Ctrl K to create a new variable, and we can call this str sentiment analysis. Like this. We can go down to variables, and we can see that we indeed created a string. This one is a JSON, but it's still a string overall. So now we just need to print this out. Remember, we ask for the word great. So let's find a right line. And we will just print out the JSON. So we run the UiPath workflow. We will wait a few seconds. And now we can go down to output. And we can see that we called great. And that is positive. The label is positive. It's quite likely that it's positive of 70% probability, and it's quite unlikely that it's negative. These two, by the way, always adds up to 1. If this one is very low, then either one of these will always be true, or actually quite likely it's true. Basically, if it's below 0.5. So now we can use this analysis on our example. We need to scrape the data first. We go back to our browser, we go to Twitter, and we search for Walmart. We will take the Walmart hashtag, and we can see that we can either take the top tags or we could take the latest. I don't know, let's just pick latest. But keep in mind that these ones here are usually in English, but we can have some in Spanish, and that these Spanish tweets our sentiment analysis tool can handle, or the API can handle, so we won't analyze this. That we will need to create an exception for, but that's just a minor detail. And of course, we could also use our analysis on any kind of social media. So, but now we just use this Twitter. So we can scroll down, and we can even we can ask how many tweets do we want to do an analysis for. I think we will just do like 10 or something. But then we go back to UiPath. Now let's we will just keep this. We will change it slightly in a moment, but we'll need to data scrape our results from Twitter. So we need to save the data from Twitter so we can do the analysis on it and then write it back to Excel. So we do the data scraping. We do this, we scroll up, and then we select the first element. That's the first tweet here. So we click next, and now we can see that we can select. We will select the entire tweet, so we'll get the words out of it like this. Then we will select the second element. So we scroll a little bit down so we can see our second element. That's this tweet. We click next, and we choose it here. We will call it something like, we could call it extracted data or tweets. Maybe we should call it tweets actually, like this. We could also have a URL for each of the tweets. That one will be useful if we wanted to save the URL so we can mail our social media reaction patrol in Walmart and tell them that this URL we have a negative tweet. However, let's not do it here. We click next, and we can see that we indeed have our tweets here. I think I will do a maximum of let us just do 10 tweets. We don't need that many more. We click finish, and then we will get asked if our data is spanning multiple pages. However, we will say no for now. So now we did our data scraping here, and the only thing I want to change is that I want to do a little change to our name of the DT extracted data table. I will call it DT extracted data. This is just a detail. I like to name my variables like this. We will change the scope to main like this. So now we got our data out, and we can start to do our analysis. Let's go to our desktop, so I'll minimize these two. I'll create a blank Excel sheet, so new Microsoft Excel worksheet. We could just call this Walmart tweets, like this. Now we can open it, and it will of course be blank. We will have a sheet 1, that's where we keep our data. And in the first column we want to have the, let me just do a little bit better of like this. So the first column, that will be our tweets, the text from our tweets. Then we will have our label here, and then each of the scores afterwards. Let me close this one down again. The first thing we will do in UiPath is to just write out these tweets. We will choose the right range, and we will choose the right range on the workbook activities, not the Excel activities, because this one don't need an Excel scope. So we will just drag it in here in the end. And we can see that we dragged it outside of the data scraping sequence. If we haven't changed the scope here, if this extracted data was still in the data scraping, then we couldn't find a variable down here. So that's why we changed it to the whole main. The workbook path, well, click here. And we could either choose to just hard code in their Excel sheet. I have mine here, or we could create a variable. We'll just hard code it in for now, but you could, of course, create a variable. That is useful if you want to reuse this, or you want to change it often when your project has get published. So I will change this. We will write to sheet 1, and then our data table, that is the DT extracted data. So now we scraped some data and we have written it out to Excel. Let's try to run it. We will data scrape the tweets. And we can now go to, let me minimize this, we can go to our Excel sheet and we can verify that we indeed get the tweets written out to Excel. Here we can see that we have our tweets. We could, let me close this one down. What we can do is that we could add headers to the column. So here in the right range, we'll just say add headers. Then we will have the header of the extracted data. So now we have our data out, we can start to do the sentiment analysis. That was the HTTP request we did up here. But now we just need to do it for every tweet. And what we do here is that we will have a for each row of this extracted data, and then we'll do the HTTP request on each of the rows. So find a for each row, drag this guy in, not under data scraping, just here in main. You could of course also put it here, but we would like to keep things clean. We could minimize this so it doesn't take up space. So the for each row, that is in the DT extracted data, like here. Then we could start to do the HTTP request. So let me delete this body sequence here and drag this HTTP request down. And I'll drag in the right line as well. So now we need to think. We have the parameters. We had the parameters of grade. You remember that in the options parameters collection, in the beginning we added the grade, but now we need to add the text of the data table, so each one of the tweets, and we can do that by simply just changing this value to row item. This one, the row will refer to the current row of our loop, then the item, that is the column header. We need to put in the column header of the current column of the data table where our tweets is, and that was extracted tweets, right? So extracted tweets like this, and then because this is an object, we get it from this data table, we need to convert it to a string like this. So we can click OK, and now we can simply do the sentiment analysis for each one of our tweets, and let us just skip this right range for now. We will enable it when we are done. So this one will data scrape, and then we will do the analysis. Let's try to run it. So we run. UiPath will start up in a few seconds. UiPath has started up, I can see here in the background. And then we scrape the data and we do the HTTP request for each one of the tweets. We can see here that we now have a score and we have a label for each one of the tweets. We have some neutral tweets, negative tweets, positive tweets, negative, neutral, positive, whatever. That's good. Then we can start to think, well, we get the JSON from this HTTP request, but we need to deserialize it to extract, because we don't want, let me open the output, we don't want this JSON. This one will not look good in our Excel sheet, so we just want the scores out and the label out. Let's create that. First, we need to deserialize the JSON for each one of these rows. So go up to Activities, find a Deserialize JSON, drag it in. just after HTTP request. And in the input up here, we will put our output string from the HTTP request, that's the str, sentiment analysis. Then in the output, we will have a JSON object, so Control K, JSON object, like this. And again, we can go down to variables, and we can see that we have created a JSON object variable. That one we will just leave in the sequence because we'll only use it in the sequence. Now what we can do is that we can extract, for example, the labels. So if we delete this, and instead in the right line, we will refer to the JSON object like this, and then we can just have a parentheses, and in quotation marks we can write out there. You can see here, we can, let me go to sentiment analysis. We can write out the label, for example. Let's try to write out the label, and this one will write out the corresponding label, that like pass here. So what we do is that we'll say JSON object label like this, and then we can just convert it to a string. This one will write out our label score for each one of the tweets. So we run the file again. We will wait a few seconds. Wait a few more seconds while UiPath will run. Now we're done. We can go to output and we can see that we now have extracted just the labels. That's brilliant because that's one we will use in our Excel sheet. So remember, let me minimize this. Remember our Excel sheet that was here. We will, in the first column, we would have the tweets and we will have a header this time. And then we will have the label in the B column. Let's create that. Close down the Excel sheet again, go back to UiPath. And let me comment this one in again, because now we will need to write it out to Excel. So in the right range, remember we had the add headers, and now we just need to create a column in our data table for our label, and then we can write out the range of this data table, because right now this doesn't belong to our data table. So we will go up to activities, and then we will find a add data column. We will drag it in before each row, like here. And what will our column name be named? I will call it label in quotation marks. Then our data table, well, that's just a DT extracted data. That's where we want to add the column to. What we can do here is that we have the data column. We can, instead of just writing it out to a right line, we could add it to the column next to the tweets. So we will find an assign activity and drag this assign in. What we'll say here is that we'll say row. That still refers to the row of the data table. That's fine, the Q and row. We know we're here. Then the item, that is the column. And we want to assign this value to the label column. We just created the label column up here, so that's fine. What do we want to assign? Well, just this expression here. So we copy it and paste it in up here. Now we don't need our right line because we will write out to Excel. Let's save it and let's try to run it. We now run it, we scrape the data, even though it's not visible, but I have minimized the browser. So we scrape the data now. We will wait a few seconds and now we're done. Let me minimize this and we can go down to our Excel sheet and verify that we indeed get the label score printed out. We will have it here and we can see now the tweets are here, that they are quite long. So, and then we have the score right next to them. So now we have the labels printed out. Maybe we should try to write out the scores as well, because these ones are a little bit different. However, they are not that different. So we go down to UiPath. What we'll need to do here is, because, let me show you, here in the JSON that we get back, we can see that we have the label, that's pass, and we have a probability. However, further down in the tree, we have the neg, neutral, and pass. We will apply some C# to this to extract these very easily. I'll show you how. Minimize this. Then let's first add a data column for their negative score. So I will add a data column like this. The column name, that will be negative. The data table, that will be the DT extracted data. We still add the data to this. Then these ones will be the same, of course, and then we'll just create another assign. And as I told you, this one will look a little bit different. So we will we had the negative up here, so we will like we did here, we added to the label column, we will add to the negative column, so row item, negative, that's this. And here we will, of course, still be referring to our JSON object. Let me open up the value from up here. So here we will say JSON object, and then we will do the select token. That was the sharp link, and that's just it. Now we can do this. We, in quotation marks, let's go back to our sentiment analysis. We will take the first one, that's the probability, and then we will have the neg. So what this looks like is that we have the probability, then dot neg, like this. And then we are done. We will write this out to the negative column. We can save it and we can try it once more. And here, when we just write to the Excel, let's find that this object, we don't have to convert it to a string if you wondered why I didn't do that. So let me minimize these things here. Let me open up the Walmart Tweets Excel sheet again. Yeah, we opened it up a couple of times, I know. So now we will have the negative score as well, and we will of course also have the tweets. So now we have the label and the negative score. We can just create the positive and the, let me close this one down. We will create the neutral and the positive scores like similar to this. So we will drag in add data column. Here we will have a neutral, like this. We will still add it to the DT extracted data, like here. And then we can go down here and we will drag in two assigns. So assign and assign. That one will be row item neutral here. And this one will of course be this one, JSON object select token. And then one will just be, I think it's neutral here, but we can verify that it is indeed neutral because that is from the JSON. Yeah, it's neutral. So we have it here. Now we added this data column, and we will of course do the same for the positive. So we will just say positive DT extracted data, like this. Now we just need to change this. So we will add to the positive column positive, then we'll copy this one from up here. We'll say positive, like this. So now we created our entire workflow. Let's try to run it and verify that we have created a working workflow. By the way, stay on the channel and watch the next video, as we will continue with another advanced UiPath use case example. So let me minimize this. We will open up the Walmart tweets, and we can now see that we have created our entire Excel sheet, or we can see that in a moment. So we created our entire sheet. We can just do this. We have each one of the tweets, we have a label and a score for each one. Now we have it in an Excel sheet. We could have it in a database, or we could send an email to our social media staff that could warn them, say, here, this is a highly negative tweet, please react. So that's it.